Hello, everybody. Ahmad again. I think today we're gonna be talking about what just happened in Iran and Israel and the bombing of three nuclear sites in Iran and Fordow and Aswan and all of that. We don't know what's happening. You have this B-2 giant. Bird flight that's just taken off from Missouri, from the United States for almost 40 hours and go there and drop 30,000 pounds bomb, 30,000. My goodness, making a hole in mountains, but 13 of them on each side. Somebody was joking now that Trump start building a golf course in Iran. He already has three holes. It's funny. But what is going on? The Israelis start bombing Iran for 10, 12 days, and then the American went there and dropped those giant bombs, and everybody's claiming victory, and we don't know what's going on. But you can see for the first time, rockets, Iranian rockets, just raining on Tel Aviv and major city in Israel for the first time. You can see civilians and buildings and military sites been bombed and a rocket from Iran. Anyway, it's very confusing. Everybody now calm down, and everybody now have a kind of fragile ceasefire. We don't know how long it's going to take, and everybody forgot about Gaza, the genocide for over 2 years. Over 100,000 dead and 3, 4 times uh, injured, and starvation used as a military weapon, and people are dying every day from starvation, from more bombing and malnutrition, and those leaders of Israel come and talk about Hamas and terrorism and all of this as if they haven't done a major creating human tragedy in Gaza, not just for the last 2 years. It's been going on for years. But what is Trump is trying to do? He just come and declare war and then finish and declare war on immigrants, declare war on trades, declare war on university or Harvard, and then end it. And he reminds me of this Don Quixote, that fictional characters of this Spanish, this novel was written in 1716 something by Miguel de Cervantes, and Spain was like America now. It was an empire, was the richest, most powerful country in Europe, and a lot of wars, a lot of they discover America and everything now, wealth and everything going to America, and they are losing there. And so a lot of declinings. And here comes this fictional character to try to make Spain great again. And he kind of delusional knight, and he just get in fights and a lot of imaginary enemies, like windmills. They think they are the Moors, the Muslims, and fight with a barber and take his, hat, which was a sink. Just a bizarre story that Cervantes wrote it to kind of make, mockery of what's real when it's not real, and how There was so much talk about tourism and chivalries and all of that, just books and literature and novels, but he has a simple man, just imagining things and and they kind of confuse reality with imaginary thing with reality. Okay, I think we're going to be talking to Professor David Schultz. We usually bring him to talk to us when we have a problem. He's a professor of political science at Hamlin. And hello,
Hello there.
how you doing?
Good. Sorry I'm late. I was feeding my cat.
That's very important.
Yes.
Very important. What kind of a cat is this we are talking
We
about?
have we have actually two cats, a mother and daughter. I'm not
Oh,
sure quite what that. I think they got some Persian in them or something like that. But anyhow, 4 o'clock was dinner time.
well, we don't want to mention Persian this time. Otherwise, you might find something dropped out of your house.
That's
Uh,
right. That's right.
what's going on? I was just doing a little introduction here, and you read that novel for Miguel de Cervantes at Don Quixote, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I was just writing a piece, or I'm trying to kind of compare what Trump is doing. Kind of like Don Quixote. Don Quixote is heroism and confused between reality and imaginary enemies, and he's starting wars with who's
Yeah.
everybody, who's immigrants, who's Muslims, who's Iran, whatever, and he end the war and declare victories. He's just living in this delusional reality.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. I'm not sure if I would compare it to the Don Quixote and Cervantes, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Orwell's 1984.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. But
we
I know Don Quixote has good intention, but this guy, I don't know, he knows he has an intention. In a way, he's exposing everybody for this. I know Biden and Obama, and they keep talking about the foundation, and they have
right.
protocol or tradition, but they have wars and they invading and they cause deaths of millions of people. But this guy is just you cannot predict him. So somewhere here we're gonna wipe out Iran, or sometime I need a Nobel peace. Sometimes
Right.
starts a war.
Um, is Israel a client state of the United States, and therefore we're using Israel as a proxy, or is Israel driving U.S. foreign policy? And I can't quite figure out which it is, but needless to say, I'm highly skeptical that the U.S. didn't know anything about what Israel's bombings. Everybody in the world, I swear, except for Donald Trump, knew that Israel wanted to bomb Iran and take away their nuclear capabilities. Was Trump and the United States the only country in the world clueless? I don't know. But anyhow, I can't quite figure out the relationship here. So I think what Trump was trying to say on the one hand is come to the negotiating table and do what I say, with the veiled threat of a bombing, and then finally decided it looks like, well, what we'll do is, since I don't want to wait anymore, let's bomb you, and now hope that'll bring you to the bargaining table. There is no consistency with Trump's foreign policy. But going back to a comment you made before here, I think he's bringing out or making explicit all the contradictions in U.S. foreign policy, so that we get to see them in a more naked sense. Is that, on the one hand, the United States wants an agreement with Iran. On the other hand, it doesn't want an agreement. I think the United States would love to have regime change there. I think they would like to get rid of nuclear capabilities of Iran, if in fact they have them. So previous governments, Biden, Obama, working back
Bush.
there, Bush, there's always been this tension there, and all Trump has done is to say, well, let's just make it obvious where we are at this point. Now, I don't know if they're explicitly saying that, but that's what's coming out to me is that all the contradictions, all the tensions about U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East are now easy to see in a very ugly way.
And this is not just happened with Iran, and I
Well,
think
of course,
also happened, with immigration, deportation,
yeah,
China, whatever. But when you look at the relationship between Iran and the United States all these years, Iran worked with the United States in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria. So
right.
Iran is not an innocent bystander here. We work with them, and I think a lot of people thinking about. Why now? Is this a staged? Is this something just to move the needle a little bit? I mean, Iran told the United States about what they're gonna do in Qatar and what time, and they should
Mhm,
move
mhm.
around. United States, as they say, they told a few countries we're gonna bomb Iran. Israel, they tell Arab Zionist leader what they're going to do to Iran. And I think a lot of Arab leaders are happy to see, the bombing of.
Don't you think that probably somewhere in Riyadh, there's probably cheering going on right now? Because as
Mhm.
we know, Saudi Arabia and Iran are competing for regional power. But also, I want to take us back, what, 70 years? Remember, it was 70 years ago that the United States helps orchestrate a coup that basically puts the Shah of Iran in. And we think that what? Iran's a client state within our sphere of influence, probably as a check upon the Soviet Union. 1979 happens, 1980 happens, Shah is ousted, our American hostages are taken. And I think, especially for a lot of Americans, especially conservative Americans, they've been ticked off for nearly 50 years. 50 years that what's that great line? That Iran's a son of a bitch, but they're not our son of a bitch, to use that great line from the Vietnam War here.
Yeah, yeah.
So now, even though we've never explicitly said regime change, I think that's what the U.S. wants. Israel wants it. I suspect a lot of other Middle East states want it. So again, this reflects this tension out here and built up angers and grievances. But the other thing I think about here, and I'm thinking very historically today, is that have we learned nothing from, I don't know, Afghanistan and Iraq? In the sense that first, regime change doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see a country openly embrace democracy or the United States. And two, uh, where are the weapons of mass destruction? Remember when Bush said we're going to go into Iraq, is they had weapons of mass destruction. Well, they didn't. I still remember this famous scene. What was it? Was it Colin Powell before the UN trying to say, look at all the weapons of mass destruction, we never found them. There's not a lot of evidence here that Iran really was building a nuclear device, or at a point where it's a danger. And so, how much of this is pretext? That's why I think a lot of what's going on here is pent up anger, the idea that Israel wants, along with the U.S., to remake the Middle East, and we want Iran to be our client state again.
You talk about the military coup or whatever, bringing the Shah to Iran. They topple a democratically or elected president, Mossadegh. So
Right,
the Americans not after a democratic regime change. They
right,
actually the other way around. I mean,
right.
they are toppling democratically elected regimes and I mean governments in Africa and in Europe, I mean,
South America.
in North America and in the Arab world. So I don't know what the American foreign policy stands for.
See, I don't either. If it was a different president, I would be very comfortable saying I think it's about geopolitics. It's about wanting to bring Iran back into our fold as a client state. For Trump, I think it's what? Trump Plaza in Tehran. And I hate to be so crass,
Yeah,
but
in
but
Gaza.
but but it's like when I said to one of my students a few weeks ago, why, what's going on in Gaza? And I said, I think at some point Trump wants what? Trump Plaza in the Gaza.
Yeah.
Beachfront property there that he can develop. Here, I don't know, maybe this is what? Trump Plaza on the Straits of Hormuz or something like that. And I just say that because I'm not sure, going back to what we started with our conversation here, Trump's has any global vision. We could say 50 years ago, for good or for bad, Kissinger had a global vision. Not sure I agreed with it, but a global vision. I'm not sure if Trump's "Make America Great" mantra has much of a global vision, so much as it has a what knee-jerk reaction to it. And again, I think a lot of what's driving it still is what a bunch of people are pissed off that 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 52 American hostages were taken, and we've never gotten even.
Well, I mean, this is, not having a global vision, and it probably has a naive one, it's
Right,
imaginary one. I mean,
right.
that's what Don Quixote. Don Quixote is just
That's true.
wants to make Spain great again, and but you alluded to the fact, is American are using the Zionist project or Israelis or the other way around. A lot of
Right.
people, Tucker or whatever, Carlson now is making a name again. This guy's been espousing lies about everything.
Mhm.
Now he's a hero of liberal Democrats because
Right.
he's just simply saying Israel is a foreign country and AIPAC is a foreign a
That's
foreign
right.
lobby, and we should not align ourselves with Israel and should not drag us to a war. But in fact, I think it's the other way around. Israel as the founder of Israel is a Zionist
Right.
founder. They say we're going to be like a military vessel for the
Right.
West. We're going to be your guys. We're going to be your watchdog there. So we've been using them,
Right.
and we allow AIPAC to work here to intimidate anybody to say otherwise. So the same thing is Trump been using the resources and the Americans military or police or ICE or the other way around?
Has Trump in the United States adopted an Israeli vision of of Middle East foreign policy? I think that's increased. I'm not sure. I'm not
No,
sure at one
no,
level.
no, no.
Yeah, I mean, to a large extent, on one level, I would say Trump's doing exactly what Israel wants. But on the other hand, I still think because of all the arms we send, not just Trump, but Biden did it too, all the arms we're sending to Israel. Again, Israel is the proxy for the United States, and the bombing last week finally stripped away the veneer. Stripped away the veneer that before we could say, well, it was just the Israelis doing it. Well, no, now we're involved. But what I find interesting is in the last few days is this debate going back and forth between what is it, the Defense Intelligence Agency, Trump, the Defense Department. Did we degrade their nuclear capabilities? Now, I'm certainly not an expert, on all of this here, but my sense is that Trump wanted to show muscle, wanted to do something. I have a theory. I can't prove it. I have a theory that when he was asking his military about bombing the nuclear facilities, our capabilities in Iran, I bet the Defense Department said it's going to take several bombing raids. It's going to take multiple efforts to degrade and eventually get down there, which basically means what? Real explicit commitment by the U.S. I think he thought, well, let's go in one and done, intimidate. And that's why I think a lot of I'm going to call it what a lot of the lying is going on right now, is that Trump wants to show muscle and not show muscle. Um, what's that great phrase that's being uttered now? Taco Don. Trump always chickens out. And I think that's what's happening here. He both wants to show strength and is also not showing strength.
I'm telling you, I'm going back to Don Quixote. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean, it doesn't really matter anymore.
yeah.
Where is the Democratic Party in all of this?
It's interesting. You know, um, I'm not sure we have a two-party state or two-party government anymore. The Democrats have completely disappeared, from American politics. You'll see them occasionally hand-wringing and so forth and saying Trump's doing these horrible things, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, but A, I don't see them having any influence. But B, again, I also suspect very secretly or not so secretly, they're cheering on the bombing. They're cheering on a lot of this stuff also too. I don't think the Democrats are also in a position of being able to say we disagree seriously with the Republicans' policies towards Israel, Gaza, Hamas, or Iran. But you're right. I mean, we've essentially seen the Democratic Party what almost fade into oblivion.
Well, we saw Zohran Mimdani, I think I want to make sure I got his name. A great win primary in New York. Is there any indication of anything? Here is they call socialist, progressive, and the Democratic establishment, the Ayatollah of the Democratic Party were against him, and they circle
Well,
around a crook like Como.
Cuomo is an incredibly flawed candidate,
Yeah.
also representing an establishment. Him and Bill Clinton, I think, were big losers. Well, Clinton, I mean, because this is the establishment revolves around Cuomo, and it loses. Okay, now that should be one message to the Democrats. The second message that the Democrats should take away from this is that these were bread and butter issues that he ran on. He ran about housing, he ran about affordability issues, but mostly I'm going to say the housing issue. And I think one of the messages that Democrats still have yet to get is that if you want to win, talk about the issues that matter to people. And maybe that's the message that's out there. I just don't know if it's going to happen at this point. Is that I think a lot. I think the more centrist wing of the Democratic Party, or I'll call it the mainstream wing, is already condemning his win. Actually, what's fascinating is in the Thursday New York Times, the editorial board for the New York Times has already said this is horrible, this is terrible, or something like that. Uh, I mean, isn't this a sign of sort of the elitism and the the out of touch? I think the party leadership is.
And speaking of the media and how they cover the war, let's stay with New York. And every time a reporter or the Memdani on a show, they always ask, does Israel have the right to exist? What does have to do with a local election in New York? And the same thing in regime change in Iran, and you have to be regime here. It's like, when we're gonna have regime change here in the United States? Language that is reserved to the others. The people are the backward. The people are dangerous.
Right.
The Mamdan is dangerous. He's a Muslim. He is a brown person. He's coming an outsider. So we
Yeah.
always have to face him. What are you going to do about the Jew in New York? What are you does Israel? So this is even comes from mainstream media, not Fox, not right wing media.
No, I think you're right, and especially coming from the New York Times. The we know, and we've seen over the last few years the New York Times increasing bias, and distortion of a lot of its news. But certainly here, what we're seeing is I would like to see the New York Times asking him questions about how are you going to provide affordable housing, who's going to pick up the garbage, things like that, things that they should be asking about. But you're right, they're imposing upon him and sort of making him what the token Muslim upon which he now is the spokesperson for all Muslims in the United States, or at least in New York City. And he speaks for what? Iran. He speaks for Phil, et cetera, like that. It's 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 clearly a way of delegitimizing him.
Well, obviously, it did not work, and that does that.
Oh,
It seems like things are changing now, and people needs to wake up. Young people don't buy this shit anymore. Young people rally about him. See, he is almost building a movement that we thought Obama was going to build, and
yeah, yeah,
he did not follow through. He was a sellout. It was a political, cross-dresser, and we don't hear about him anymore. Where
yeah,
is Obama about the bombing of Iran? Where is Clinton? Where is all these bosses of the Democrats? The only one who's talking about the war and bombing is Tucker Carlson, is the most new
yeah,
con that in the last 20 years. So it's really amazing to watch what is. I mean, the Democratic Party, how the Democratic Party is melting before our eyes.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. I mean, if you look at the last election, if you look at exit polls, the was it like 34% of people, or something like, I don't know, 36% said identify as Republicans, 34% said independents, and then Democrats came in third. They're a third party now, and they are fading. They are fading. And again, now what? 7 months or so, 8 months after the election, um, there's still no indication that they have, as a party, figured out what to do. And if we both are in Minnesota. The new chair of the Democratic Party is Ken Martin, who was the chair of the Minnesota Democratic Party. And there's also now incredible amount of pressure being placed upon him, and he's being criticized because I think he's taking the approach that Democrats have taken for years. I remember back when Reagan was first elected, the Democrats said, "Well, Reagan's just a one-off. When people regain their sentences, they'll come back and vote for us." When people voted for Trump, they said, once they regain their senses, they'll come back to us. I think Democrats are still doing that, and Ken Martin's doing that, saying that, listen, that it's just different. Trump is unusual, and if we just sort of stand pat, let Trump self-destruct, the Democrats and the voters will come back to us.
Well, so on that note, well, thank you so much, and
Sure.
appreciate your help on this. And we wish you summer is here. You're done with school, and
Done
what's
with
the
school,
plan?
so we need to figure out. I'll email you. We'll figure out a day and get together for coffee.
Sounds good. Sounds like a better plan than bombing somebody.
Well, unless we go drinking, then we can get bombed, but that's another story entirely.
Astaghfirullah al-azim. Okay, Professor David Schultz, professor of political science, Hamlin University, will always come and talk to us and enlighten us about foreign events. And
Sure.
thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Stay with you. Bye.
Thanks.